Welcome back. I figured today we would do something a bit more quote-unquote lighthearted, and by lighthearted I mean it's a tier list, and you know, we all love tier lists, I think. I know some people are very passionate about tier lists, but that aside, I figured it'd be fun just to rank all the PRF skills. I saw this on Reddit earlier today, and I figured it'd be something just fun for a video, and that's what we're gonna do. If you want to do it yourself, I'll leave a link to the post in the description, and you can check it out there. Still, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be ranking every single PRF skill that we have. As far as I can tell, this may be every PRF skill, not including specials or assists. But if that isn't the case, just let me know what I missed down below, and I'll cover it in some regard. Hopefully this is every one of them, but never mind that. We might as well just get started with Bushido 2, which is basically IOT with damage reduction and true damage per hit. It's relatively decent for what it's worth, mainly because it is on Legendary Ryoma, who already has no follow-up in their weapon. So they're basically getting the combination of damage reduction, no follow-up, and no flyer weakness. And while you still lose out on a fair amount of infantry skills comparatively to the infantry unit, you aren't prone to any weaknesses outside of maybe some rare niche cases like sword effectiveness. And for what that's worth, I think that's pretty good. But comparatively to something that we already have like Spurn, where a lot of infantry units can run it, you're only really missing out on 9 true damage, which is still a fair amount. But comparatively, I don't think it's nearly as good as it once was. But still, I think it holds up relatively well. Next we have Chaos Named Plus, and I'm just going to put that in the solid category. Mainly because it is a very, very good debuffing tool, as you can just basically debuff every single stat and inflict panic on every unit with the highest respective stat, which is really, really good for just general debuffing. The only reason I'm not putting it in the Y category is because there's still counterplay to it, and it's still relatively strong as is, but you can still run stuff like Unities or Slick Fighter or whatever the case may be, so even armors can still stand a chance against it. So when you take a refund into account, it makes it a lot more prevalent than it has any right to be. Next we have Blue Line Rule, and I'm also going to put this in the decent category. I think it follows a similar suit to Bushido 2. It's basically a guaranteed follow-up with damage reduction based on the unit's defense, and it's going to be pretty easy to use, mainly because it's on Brave Dimitri, who has a really good defense stat, so in that regard, it's really not too bad. Although in my opinion, Dimitri's way more carried from his Refine than his PRF B slot, which is still good on its own, but now that every unit can basically just run no follow-up and damage reduction in tandem with each other really easily, I don't think the niche is really as strong as it once was, but it's still a good skill in my opinion. Next we have Armored Wall, and I'm going to put that in solid mainly because you have the guard and instant special retaliation, assuming you're running a 2 cooldown special, but it also heals and has 40% damage reduction on the first combat, which can be really good for tanking prowess. And even to this day, while Fallen Edelgard definitely isn't as intrusive as she was in the meta way back when, she could still be really strong. And I would argue that Armored Wall is what makes her really obnoxious. And yeah, there's really not much else to say on that front. It's Armored Wall, Fallen Edelgard, whoop-de-doo. You either beat her or you don't. And I think you can apply that to like every single unit in the game. Anyway, Assured Rebirth, I'm also going to put in solid. The reason I'm putting this above Blue Line Rule is because it has more damage reduction properties. And it's not going to be difficult to maintain comparatively to the defense one because most units don't have as much res as they do defense. So in that regard, I do think Assured Rebirth is a bit better. Dragonhide. We could put that in the Y category because outside of it just debuffing and having breath, it has armor nullification, meaning that you basically have a more obscene Brave Hector, who is still a relatively good unit to this day, but when you put this on a dragon unit and their only weakness is dragon effectiveness, neutralizing one of their weaknesses while also having a really good speed set and just throwing in a lot of stats to boot, and basically a free sacred seal for whatever you want because you don't need to run breath or breath support, yeah, it's pretty good. Chivalry. That can also go in the solid category. Chivalry is what I would say is probably going to be the most consistent form of damage reduction. It's based on the current pool of the foe's HP set. So if they have 100% HP, you're getting 50% damage reduction per hit, which is really good. And then with the remaining Canto +1, you could always just run away after combat. And the thing is that if you are below a certain HP threshold anyway, chances are he could always just one-shot. Of course, it will depend on the unit and whether it's like a Vantage unit or whatever the case may be. But for what it's worth, I still think it's a really solid form of damage reduction. And the Kanto to boot means that he could also act as a hit and run unit, which I think is quite valuable. Surtur's Menace. Goodbye. Belief in Love. It debuffs during combat, and I believe that's about it. We have a lot better options, especially when it comes to melee flyers now. It's not really anything impressive, but for a stat swing, it's okay for what it's worth. Now, I don't remember if this was Gunthra's or this was Reed's, but regardless, I think it's still pretty decent. It has the debuff effect. Regardless of which one you're using, it has a debuff effect that is obscenely large, and for Hrids in particular, while it doesn't debuff as many stats, it does inflict guard, which is pretty good. Crusader's Ward, it doesn't really do anything, so you could go. What is that one? Oh, it's Binding Necklace. I think this one's actually pretty good. It's relatively basic for what it's worth, but it means that for someone like Freya, speed checks are going to be obscenely easy to take care of, because not only is she already really fast, but if the foe has any sort of visible buffs, you could just steal them, and you could basically get a way bigger stat swing. And for what it's worth, I think it's pretty good. Double Lion, I think it's passable. We have a lot better options when it comes to B slots, and 100% HP for a Brave attack in the player phase. It's okay, but I don't think it's anything crazy. Atrocity, I would say this is pretty solid. It has a lot of true damage, and similar to Chivalry, if the foe's HP is below 50% anyway, it's not really going to matter, because more often than not, you're just going to one-shot. Bjork's Blessing, not good. Divine Recreation, I would say this is actually pretty decent. It is only damage reduction on the first hit, but you basically have the Ice Mirror effect where it just reflects all the damage you were soaking. And because of that, I do think it has a bit more of a presence for one-shot potential, especially since it's only based on the HP amount rather than the range, meaning that it's a lot more flexible. Divine Fang Plus, guaranteed follow-up with dragon effectiveness and stats. I think it's okay. I don't think it really does a lot, but since there are quite a fair amount of dragons, especially in Anima season, I think it does have a bit more value, especially with the guaranteed follow-up, since you could just bypass Duma's wary effect with it, as long as you can make a speed check. Detailed Report, I'm going to put that in solid, mainly because it's one of the only ways you can still shut down turn 1 Wings of Mercy chaining stuff, and while you still have Legendary Merc scale on a better combat unit, I think having it instantly ready makes it really good. And in fact, before I forget, we may as well just put that up there, because they basically do the same thing, except Myr does have a higher ceiling of effectiveness at the cost of just having to wait a turn. Ashera's Chosen, I think it's okay. It has stats, it has flyer effective nullification, and it's on Altina, and for what it's worth, it's fine. She's not really the bulkiest currently, and she is due for a remix, I believe, in January. So for now, I think it's just decent. It does what it really needs to do. It provides stats during combat, and it neutralizes any effectiveness that she may have to take. But yeah, I think it's okay. Binding Shield 2, I think that's also pretty decent. I don't think it's really going to be as good as maybe something like Null Follow-Up, unless you're just using it for the player phase, because if you're already fast enough, the foe isn't going to double you anyway. But for player phase purposes, it is a free fire sweep effect, so it's not bad. I just don't think it's anything crazy. Domain of Ice. Again, damage reduction first hit, and it's a joint drive effect, meaning that it affects multiple units within a specific range. So, you know what? Not bad at all. Deadly Balance. I think it's passable. It does have the Mistletoe effect, and it does provide stats, but outside of that, it's still competing with a lot. And it's not really that crazy in my opinion. Black Eagle Rule. That can go in the solid category. Guaranteed follow-up with 80% damage reduction on the second hit, and because it's on an armor, it's going to be really obscene. Glare. I'm going to put that in decent. It does have good hit and run capabilities because it does have the gravity effect, and because Nyla does have Kanto in her weapon, it's honestly not too shabby there, but for anything that could just reach or nullify the penalties, it's not going to be doing much in the long run, especially if you can only run away with a certain amount of movement. And given that you are giving up your C slot for Glare, you can't run stuff like Tempest or Assault Troop or whatever the case may be. Goddess Bearer. I think it's decent. You can just run Ult 4 with the no follow-up seal, but to Byleth's credit, It's all encompassed in one C slot, so you're not giving up as many slots for it, which is really nice. And you can just continue to stack up stats in the Sacred Seal, or run any other Sacred Seal for whatever purpose. Air to Light, extra movement, null follow-up, stats. So you know how I put Goddess Bearer in Decent? Right, I'm gonna put this in the Y category. And you may be wondering, why? One's on a 2 ranged mage, and the other one's on a sword cav. So, you tell me which one's going to be a lot more threatening. Nana's skill. Atrocity with Canto. Not bad. Not bad whatsoever. I don't know what that one is. Let me look it up. Oh, it's Holy Ground. Yeah, you could go up here. Damage reduction per hit. Basically flames PRF in the C slot. Whoop-de-doo. Holy War's End. It definitely needs a remix, and you could still pair it up with the likes of Wyvern Katana for quad attacks in the enemy phase, but outside of that, it's really gimmicky, and it could definitely be better. Human Virtue. That's definitely solid. That can go in the solid category, for sure. Damage reduction and stats, based off the Siegelund effect, you'll love to see it. Impenetrable Dark. That can also go in solid. Shutting off any sort of support is always going to be really, really strong. And while it doesn't stop anything like saves, because saves can just stack up an absurd amount of stats, the feud effect in general is always going to be really, really beneficial. Inevitable Death. It's passable. It's really just Rain with Omni stats. It's whatever. It doesn't really do much nowadays, especially now that we have holds, and holds are going to be a lot better for supportive purposes, so passable. Killing Intent. I think it's okay. I think you could put that... you know what, actually, I don't know. I'm thinking I'm gonna put in passable. It's basically just desperation. And to be honest, I think Goddess Bearer just does a lot better job at combat because null follow-up and all that stuff. And while the desperation effect can still be pretty strong, it could also be shut off. So I'm not too keen on it specifically. Dragon Skin 2, I'm going to put in decent, actually. It's basically Spectrum 6 with the dull effect, meaning that you can't stack stats against her unless it's through invisible stuff. She's already naturally fast, so I think doubling her is going to be a bit of an issue, especially if you can't get visible buffs. Laws of Sakai, it has Fire Sweep and Spectrum 6. And for Lyn purposes, it's not bad. She's already a player face-centric unit, so the Fire Sweep effect's already going to be really, really beneficial. I would say a bit more comparatively to Binding Shield, but I don't think it's nearly as good as anything in the solid category. Light and Dark? Yeah, that can also go in decent. You know, actually no, this can go in solid. It has penalty neutralization, as well as the dull effect and stats. And it prevents any sort of adaptive damage, meaning that she can be really, really obnoxious. You can't buff against her, and you can't debuff her. So you know what? That's pretty good. Legendary Erica's skill. We could put that in the decent category. You know what? No, let's put this in solid. It has the null follow-up effect, it has true damage, and it has Canto. It's not really missing anything she needs in particular, although Erica herself is just okay. I think she's still... Actually, no. I think she's pretty decent. Damage reduction, null follow-up, all that stuff. It's just that her stat line's really, really bad. If she goes up against bulkier foes, then she just adds all that to her true damage. So you know what? I think that's pretty solid. Milla's Turnwheel. That also gets to go in solid because, yeah, shutting down defenses is fun. Woo, I love isolation. The only reason I'm not putting it in Y is because Dancer Elegant is pretty mainstay in dark defenses, and she can't really break through them on a consistent basis. So because of that, I'm just going to put her in solid. Moonlight Bengal. This can go in solid too. It has the tempo effect, it adds a lot of damage, and it has Canto too. And the reason it's not any higher is mainly because it does rely on getting a special off, which you can still do very easily, but if she is just one-shot in retaliation, it's not going to matter anyway. Moon Twin Wing. Damage reduction based on speed, but she's also a defense mythic, meaning that it's not going to be too easy, but she does have her weapon, which is pretty decent for what it's worth. I think it's okay. I don't think it's anything crazy, but it works. Murderous Lion. It has the Canto effect and it has Fire Sweep. What more do you need? You can just initiate really, really easily. New Divinity. It has damage reduction, it has follow-up prevention, and it has stats. Yeah, you could go in decent too. Opening Retainer. I think this is actually pretty good for what it's worth, mainly because it does provide the accelerated cooldown at the start of the turn if the unit's max cooldown is intact. And that can actually open up a lot of stuff, including Gale Force. And because of that, I'm going to put it in the solid tier. Oh, I already see you. You get to go down here. And the Sheriff's Chosen, you can also go in... you know what? I think it's decent. Null Panic is pretty nice. I think Null Panic's pretty good, yeah. Oh, Opening Retainer? Yeah, this can go in solid too. The 2-space teleportation gimmick's really, really strong, and it can only really be shut down by the likes of Mur and Gatekeeper. And I like that. I like that a lot. Ostian Counter. I think it's passable. We have a lot of DC skills now that just provide stats, and this is all it really does. Provides attack and defense during combat, and unit can counterattack regardless of foe's range. I think it's fine. Osseous Pulse 2. I think that's decent. It does have the tactics requirement, whereas Opening Retainer is a bit more free, but it does also provide stats, which is really, really nice. And there's no proximity effect. As long as the team meets the condition, you just have it. Actually, yeah, no, because of that, I'm putting it in solid. I don't care, I'm putting that in solid. Presence, or whatever it's called. I think it's passable. I don't think it's nearly as strong as the other ones, mainly because it being on Micaiah, she already doesn't have a lot of bulk, unless you're taking magic into account. But it also does debuff during combat, and for what it's worth, if you can set up with her PRFB, then it does work out, but otherwise it's not really going to be that amazing. Raging Storm, that is absolutely solid. You put that on any unit with a Gale Force strategy, yeah, that's going to work out super well. You already see how Summer Edelgard is, it's ridiculous. Recovering, nope. S-Drink, yeah, I think that's passable. It has Quick Impulse at the start of turn 1, it's not a bad thing whatsoever. Sakei's Blessing, it definitely has its niche cases, I think. I think it could be up there. Sense Scale, oh, that's absolutely solid. That does quite a bit, especially if you could set up correctly. 25% true damage based on the unit's attack is quite strong, and because of the recoil damage having 7 HP, you can actually do Gale Force strategies with it pretty easily. I think this one is Duality. Okay, so Duality, it has the Raven effect, sorta, against every other color, which is pretty cool. It also allows them to function really, really well on an Aether Race defense setting because it grants 9 visible res, meaning that enemy checks are basically going to be impossible against them. And then it also has true damage and it works with AoEs. That's definitely solid. You could go up here. Oh, we gotta move down a bit. Solar Brace 2. It's not really that great when it comes to setting up Wings of Mercy chanting, but it does have Null Guard and it does have Canto too. So you know what? I think that's pretty decent. I think that's, you know what? I'm gonna say decent. Solitary Dream. No thanks. Soul of Sophia. I think it's decent on Ascended Celica. If this were just on Legendary Celica, I'd probably put in passable, or maybe not even that good, mainly because of the setup requirement. But if we are taking Ascended Celica into account, it's pretty decent. Sparkling Boost Plus. Good for tanking and all that stuff. I'm gonna say decent. It adds res too, so for what it's worth, not too bad. Dagger's Skill. It's no follow-up and it has stats. Okay. Whatever this is. Oh, wait, this is Surtur's. Oh, wait, this is Domain of Flame. I'm dumb. This goes in solid, and this goes in not good. Okay, I'm dumb. Never mind. I'm gonna put a correction in the video, maybe, hopefully, if I don't forget. Surtur's Menace. That goes here too, because it sucks. True Dragon Wool. That's a lot of damage reduction. You could go here. It basically trades more damage reduction for the special fighter effect, and you know what? I think that's pretty good. The new Upheaval, that is very solid in my opinion. And not because I like Duma, but I think being able to break a building without the need of the position lining up with the building is really, really strong. And while it does get countered hard by Elamine, if you just run 2 Duma, it doesn't really matter at that point. I think this is Ymir's Skill. That is very solid. Joint Drive Miracle, what else is there to say? Verdict of Sakei, why do you exist? It's Spectrum 12 for existing and the finish effect. Visions of Arcadia 2, you also get to go up here. You grant way too much stuff, and I don't like that. Other miscellaneous stuff. War Powder, not great. Wings of Light, I think it's okay. Altogether, I think that's somebody. I don't remember which one this was. Oh, this is with everyone too. Nah, this goes in solid. It has stats and Far Savior, really nice stuff. This should not exist. Way too strong. World Breaker, also really, really strong. Fallen Star, pretty good. Oh, here's Frid's one. Yeah, no. Oh, I got the other one mixed up. I don't even know where I put. Oh, I put in decent. Yeah, this can go here. Same tier. Follow-up ring, I would say is passable. You already can just quad in the enemy phase with the likes of Ardent if you were to use any other fighter skill, and this does have player phase applications. But when are you really going to be using Ardent in the player phase as much as the enemy phase? Don't answer that. Dragon Scale? I think it's okay. Stats, flying effectiveness, neutralization, not too bad. Faith in humanity, that's pretty solid actually. Granting yourself the tempo effect and stats is very, very nice. Woeful upheaval, that can go in the Y category. It has damage reduction with Savior, and that just means Duma is a stupidly obnoxious tank. So you get to go up there. Faithful Loyalty, I think it's decent. I don't think it really does much per se, mainly because there's just so much counterplay around it, and because it does have the Vantage effect, which is quite nice, but not being able to use it with any sort of dual phase Brave or even enemy phase Brave effect, I think limits its effectiveness, especially if you are relying on one-shots, and you're really not going to be one-shotting a lot of stuff nowadays, especially in Miracle meta. No Follow-Up Desperation, you could go in the same category as Saintly Sephirim. Yune's Whispers, Sabotage Attack and Speed. Yeah, I think that's passable. And all together from the new Tiki. Damage reduction, AoE protection, stats. That is quite nice. I think that's quite nice. And that's about it when it comes to the skill tier list. Let me know what you disagree with. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff you don't agree with. Let me know why. I want to have my perceptions changed, so tell me all about it. Anyway, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you later.